Later in the Atari 2600's incredibly lengthy lifespan, companies took chances with some pretty ambitious titles. Games such as Secret Quest, Solaris, and Kung Fu Master stretched the limits of what the basic hardware could achieve, for better or for worse. In comes Fatal Run, programmed by Steve Aguirre and released by Atari in 1989, nearly 12 years after the console's initial release in 1977. Fatal Run was a Red Label cartridge that was initially released in PAL regions only and was one of the largest cartridges ever released on the console, clocking in at a whopping 32 kilobytes. To put that in perspective, most Atari games were released on cartridges in the neighborhood of 4K or 8K in size. River Raid 2 was on a 16K cartridge. The Atari version of Donkey Kong was on a 2K cartridge. Yikes. And there was technically one game that was even bigger than Fatal Run's 32K size. The Mega Boy Educational cartridge was on a 64K cartridge. Yeah, don't get excited. All of that extra space was just used to house trivia and math and stuff. This was only released in Brazil as part of the Mega Boy Compact Educational Video System. I've never actually seen one of these weird handheld systems in action, so if anyone knows of one, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, 40 seconds in and I'm already way off track here. Fatal Run on the Atari 2600 is set in 2089. The Earth is in a post-apocalyptic hellscape where a comet slammed into the planet causing radiation to spill everywhere, and the Earth's population is getting sick and potentially dying from the radiation. A vaccine has been created and it's up to you to deliver it to each city, one by one, saving as many lives as you can. Controls are simple enough: press up on the joystick to accelerate, down to hit the brakes, steer left or right, and the fire button fires your machine guns. You'll speed across 32 separate levels in what looks like a pole position clone at a glance, but it's a bit more complex than that, and there are some intricate systems at play under the hood. Not to mention, every other car you see is literally out to kill you, Mad Max style. There's also obstacles like trees, buildings, and oil slicks. Is that a roadblock or a ham and Swiss sandwich? You'll notice several gauges and things going on at the bottom of the screen as well. You've got a radar in the lower left, more on that in a sec. You've got a fuel gauge as well as ammunition. You've also got some meters in the lower right letting you know your vehicle's damage situation on the engine, tires, and armor. It's actually kind of impressive to see all these systems at work on the Atari, even if they are a bit clunky. For example, if the engines take too much damage, you won't be able to go as fast. You've actually got a few ways to defend yourself here. Your vehicle comes equipped with a machine gun, although you don't have unlimited ammo. You can hang back behind an enemy vehicle and shoot them, although they take a considerable amount of damage before they're eventually destroyed. Once you run out of ammo, you can do something called a power surge. Hold down the fire button and then press up and basically try to run over the enemy vehicles in front of you. If you do it right, you'll destroy them, although this can be tricky with the joystick because you need to be pressing up at the same time while also keeping them in front of you steering left or right. If you screw it up, you'll just take too much damage. I found it was easier to pull this off if you just use a Sega controller, which has a D-pad instead of the standard Atari controller. This also seems to be affected by your speed, so if you have a lot of damage to your engines, it will actually take longer to destroy the bad guys. Now, about that radar in the corner. You'll want to keep an eye on this because enemies can approach you from the front or from behind on the roadway. If you see an enemy catching up to you from behind, you can quickly press down to slam on the brakes, and if you time it just right, they'll run into you and explode. The good news here is that there is only one enemy vehicle on the road with you at a time, so if you haven't seen one out ahead, odds are they're coming up from the rear. Keep checking that radar. I don't know how many times I'd forget and then just be taking damage out of nowhere. Occasionally you'll see these little diamonds in the roadway that you can pick up to repair various aspects of your vehicle, depending on the color. Once you get to the end of a stage, you'll see a short cutscene letting you know how many people you were able to save with the vaccine, and this is dependent on how fast you made it through the level. The faster you go, the more people you save. If you don't get there fast enough, the game heckles you and tells you to try harder. I love it. You beat the level and the game still gives you grief. You need to push harder, go faster. You're doing a terrible job and you should be ashamed of yourself. Oh, come on, man. If you're able to get there fast enough, you actually get a time bonus, and that's important. Depending on how many people you saved, you also get money that you can spend on repairing damage to your vehicle before you start the next mission. Again, that's a pretty intricate system to have for an Atari game. It also has a password system. Every couple of levels gives you a password code that you can use to continue later if you need to. There are several ways to rack up a high score, although to be honest, I was pretty much just in survival mode and just happy if I made it to the end of a stage. So what can I say about Fatal Run on the Atari 2600? Well, it's something. It does have some good things going for it. It's cool to see some of the day-to-night transitions in some of the levels, and some of the warped backgrounds are kinda neat. There's kind of a parallax scrolling effect as you turn that gives a little bit of perspective and depth to the road. The box art is pretty sweet too, although that has nothing to do with the gameplay. But seriously, check this out. All these explosions and fire everywhere. Is that the Grim Reaper hiding in the clouds? It's also impressive to see some of these complex systems in motion for an Atari game. Being able to repair your vehicle after a mission, all of these meters and gauges, that's pretty over the top for Atari. And the story here is definitely unique enough to separate itself from some of the more basic racing games on the 2600. There's way more going on here. On the minus side, for being a 32K cartridge, it's hard to tell where all that extra storage space went because the graphics are nothing to write home about. Even for an Atari game, everything is just kind of blocky and boring. The vehicles are all pretty basic looking, and you can barely tell what some of the stuff even is. Also, the obstacles come by really fast. Some of them appear on screen too quickly to even react to them sometimes, like the blockades, or if you're trying to avoid a vehicle outside the roadway, you could slam into a tree that seemingly comes out of nowhere. Also, by the time you get to the end of a stage, especially in some of the later stages, your car is going to be potentially pretty beat up. But you never seem to get enough money in return to repair everything back to 100%, especially if you're having to use the braking attack a lot, since you basically have to bring your vehicle to a complete stop. So this means rollover damage from one level to the next. The game punishes you for being bad at the game. After a few poorly played levels in a row, you could get to a point where it's mathematically impossible for you to get through a level without making a totally perfect run. And even then, if your engines are damaged, there's no way you'll get the time bonus, so you can make extra repairs and get back to 100%. And on top of that, you only get one life. Take too much damage and your car blows up and then it's game over. So you may just get to a point where you need to use your most recent password so you can reset all of your vehicle's status effects. Alright, so here's the thing. If you want to get good, and I mean like really good at Fatal Run on Atari 2600, impress your friends, maybe break the ice with that cute girl you like, check this out. The easiest way I found to do it was to just avoid using the vehicle's machine guns altogether. It has terrible range anyway, and you basically have to get right up behind the enemies to take them out. It's really awkward. Just purposely let your ammo run all the way out and avoid picking up the green diamonds which replenish your ammo if you can. If you pick them up by accident, just keep shooting at nothing till they run out again. Then just take out every enemy you can with the power surge or the braking maneuver. Avoid the edges of the roadway completely, since off-road obstacles like trees and buildings can pop in out of nowhere, and you should be able to get to the end of each stage so you'll get the time bonus and be able to keep your vehicle fully repaired. Focus on vehicle armor and engines if you can. Once I started doing that, quite frankly, the game almost got too easy. I was blasting through levels with no trouble and had money to spare after fully repairing my vehicle each time. By now you're probably asking, well that's great Aaron, but is this game really worth the $30 or more that it typically goes for? Well, no, probably not. Even if you want racing games, there are far better racing games on Atari, such as Enduro, and the Atari 7800 version of Fatal Run is going to be better for sure, although that goes for roughly double what the 2600 version goes for. Fatal Run on Atari 2600 isn't particularly good at being a racing game, and it's not particularly great at being a dystopian Mad Max style epic either. But it does have one really cool thing going for it. It has an actual ending. Check this out. I mentioned before that it has a total of 32 levels, and as you go through the levels, you'll get passwords which also act as pieces of a special code that you need. The further you get, the more parts of the code you get. If you manage to survive all the way to the end of the game in one piece with the code, you'll use the code to launch a satellite into orbit, which releases something into the atmosphere that will save the entire planet from the radiation and give everyone free HBO for a year. It's got a congratulations message at the end, and even a special cutscene with the satellite launching. How many Atari games have a cutscene at the end?